About 83% of you guys are not subscribed. Subscribing, clicking that like button, and commenting all help me out a lot in doing what I really want to do. Thank you guys so much for all your support.
3, 2, 1. What is going on, guys? Rogue TCG here, bringing another Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG deck profile. You guys voted for it, and I am responding. Here is Predaplant, and the version of Predaplant I chose to bring today is going to be Predaplant branded. It is very less so branded than it is Predaplant. This deck is primarily Predaplant with a branded engine, and I'll go into the reasoning of why we are playing the branded engine in a little bit. However, we are in a very dense proportion of Predaplants. You see so many different 3-ofs of Predaplant cards in here, comparative to the only 3-of in the branded portion being, of course, the best card, Branded Fusion. This deck is not necessarily the best in the world. I'm not going to front. I'm not going to say that this deck is amazing. However, this deck is really, really cool. Being able to basically bridge in between both of these different archetypes, which synergize so fantastically, as well as being able to dismantle your opponent's board and put up forms of interaction that's really difficult for certain decks to get over. This deck can prove to be difficult against most decks in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame right now. There are exceptions, of course, like Snake Eye, for example. One of the best things that this deck can do is turning opponent's monsters into level 1 monsters with their effects negated. But Snake Eye monsters are already level 1, and that's all that they really need to be on field in order to really do anything with like relinquished anima and things like that. So again, that's enough yapping from me. Let us get into the profile. Starting off our profile, we're on triple Predaplant Orpheus Scorpio. If it's normal or special, we can send 1 monster from our hand to the graveyard to special summon 1 Predaplant monster from our deck except for itself. And we can use each effect of Orpheus Scorpio. We can only use this effect of Orpheus Scorpio once per turn. This is probably one of the better starters in our deck, allowing us to pitch a card in order to special summon any Predaplant from deck. There's one that we really have our eye on that we're going to get to in a little bit. However, this card can summon a variety of different things from your deck, and it is not just here to summon, here's a spoiler, Darlingtonian Cobra. We can summon any Predaplant, and given some of the cards that the deck has been getting in the past couple years, that is really, really strong comparative to what we were capable of doing in like 2016, 2017. Next, we're on Predaplant Triantis. It is a Dark Pendulum Predaplant. While this card's in your Pendulum Zone, if you fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster, you can also use this card in your cards in your Pendulum Zones as monsters on the field as materials for its Fusion Summon. So this does lock us, not lock us, but we can only use our scales, and it's only for our summons. So our opponents can't use our scales for their summons if they have something like Super Poly, which may come up against like a branded player, for example. So do keep that in mind. However, Triantis is really strong, being able to be part of a 2-card combo with our next card, as well as having the effect of this card sent to the graveyard to add to your extra deck face up because it was used as the fusion material. You can choose monsters from your field up to the number of monsters you control and place predator counters on each one. And if any of those monsters are level 2 or higher, become level 1 because of the aspect that predator counters give to them. This allows us to have a very easy route to put lots of predator counters on the field, which the deck really struggled with before. So Triantis just lets us put counters on field in order to get off to the races, because a lot of our extra deck cards have effects relating to the counters, and even some of our main deck cards have effects relating to the counters. Now our next card is going to be Predaplant Bufolica. Probably pronouncing that wrong. I apologize if I am. This is the second part of our 2-card combo. I will be showing you the 2-card combo at the very end of the profile, so do keep your eye out for that. During our main phase of the Pendulum effect, you can fusion summon 1 Dark Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. You can use each effect of it once per turn. So it's a poly. This is a searchable poly in deck. You scale it, you make Triantis, and you can use both the scales. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, added a face of extra deck because it was used as a material for a fusion summon. We can target a Dark Pendulum from our extra deck except for itself and add it to hand. So frequently what we're going to do is going to scale Bufolica and Triantis and use both of them as a fusion, and then get Triantis to put predator counters and Bufo to get the Triantis back to hand. So we're only going net neutral because we get a monster on field, we get predator counters, and then we also get the Triantis back. So we started with 2 cards, now we're ending with 2 cards. Although the 2 cards were on field before, now one's on hand, 1 on field and 1 on hand. Next, we are on triple Predaplant Bioslip. If it's sent to the graveyard, we can add a Predaplant monster from deck to hand except for itself. And if a monster with a Predator counter is on field, we can special from our graveyard but banish when it leaves the field. So it's a good way to get fusion material on field if we are lacking that, as well as being a really easy way to search for any of our Predaplants that we want in our hand by just sending it to the graveyard, which is one of the reasons we are playing the branded engine in the first place, is to get an easy access to get this Bioslip into the graveyard. And I'm going to explain that, and I'm going to show that in the basic combo as well. We are on triple Predaplant Chlamydia Sundew when monsters with the Predator counter that you use as fusion material are treated as dark. So that means basically if your opponents have Predator counters, we can consider them dark if we're going to use something like Super Poly. Or, using its own effect, during our main phase, you can fusion summon one Dark Fusion monster from your extra deck using this card on field and monsters from your hand field, and our monsters with Predator counters your opponent controls as fusion material. Do keep in mind that monsters with Predator counters that I would be using as fusion material that would be dark, those are only dark when Sundew is on field. So sure, we can still treat them as dark if Sundew's on field, and we can use Super Poly and treat those cards with Predator counters as dark, but we do have to keep in mind if Sundew is not on field, Predator counter monsters are not dark. Unless they're already dark before they had a Predator counter on them, of course. And then our last two Predaplant main deck monsters. These ones are kind of our garnets per se. First one less so of a garnet, but the second one definitely is a garnet. We're on one Predaplant, not pronouncing that, Hydra. You can special it from your hand or grave by tributing a monster on either side of the field with a Predator counter. So it's a kaiju from the graveyard, functionally. We want to dump this to the graveyard or have it in hand when we're going second, and we can put some Predator counters on stuff, or we went first and it's passing back to our turn, second turn, or the turn 3 of the overall game. We can get rid of problematic monsters that have Predator counters on it with Hydra. It also has a cute effect in graveyard to modulate attack and defense by banishing other Predaplant monsters from the graveyard, which could come up. However, it's such a small amount that it modulates it by where it doesn't actually really come up. So it's more like for corner case situations. And then our last Predaplant main deck monster is Predaplant Darlingtonia Cobra. If it's special summoned by the effect of a Predaplant monster, you can add one Polymerization spell card or one Fusion spell card from your deck to your hand. And you can use Darlingtonia Cobra once per duel. That's why we're only playing one. We can only ever do it once. But the thing is, this adds Branded Fusion. It adds any fusion, any poly, that is a normal spell. I'm presuming that's a spell card, so it doesn't say quick play or anything like that. So we can't add Super Poly, but we can add Branded Fusion, Polymerization, Instant Fusion. Those are our 3 targets in deck for it. So we do have some targets for it. So Cobra is one of the main things we want to always be getting throughout our combo in order to get access to our branded portion of our deck. Next, we're on 3 Predapractice. You see how many Predaplants we're playing in the deck? We gotta play 3 Predapractice. Special summon a Predaplant from our hand, then add a Predapt card from your deck to your hand, except for itself. And then for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, we're locked into fusions. If you take a look at our extra, that doesn't really matter. So this card basically is an extender, a searcher, and then locks us, which is fine. It's also the biggest Ash magnet this deck has, which is honestly, that's good. It's good that this Ash has a better Ash, this deck has a better Ash target, or rather seems like a better Ash target initially than Branded Fusion. So typically people will be spending their Ashes here, or here, or here, or here, instead of here. Which means if you're able to windmill slam a Branded Fusion after they already Ash something, you have functionally gotten yourself in a winning position in the game. And our last Predaplant main deck card is one Predaplanting. This is probably one of the cards of all time that you really want to be searching throughout the course of your turn, either through Predapractice or with Predaplant Ambulo Melodies, once we get to that. This card says, send one Predaplant monster from your deck to the graveyard. That is cost, mind you. Place one Predator counter on each face-up monster on the field, and if you do any of those monsters that are level 2 or higher, become level 1 as long as they have a Predator counter. If you fusion summon a dark monster, all those cards in your graveyard, you can banish it from your graveyard, target a card on field, and pop it. Yeah, this card is the easiest way to put Predator counters on stuff. It just puts one on everything that's currently on board, modulates the levels all to 1, so this is the best card for stopping Sword Soul ever, or any Synchro or any Xyz deck. It just hoses them. Even stuff like Sprite, if they put 2 monsters on field and they want to make gigantic, flip up a Predaplanting and pray to God that or not pray to God, you'll like see if they don't have a carrot, there's no real recovery given the board state unless they have extenders in hand. So this is definitely a card we want to be searching throughout the course of our combo. And you notice how it said send a Predaplant from deck to graveyard as cost. What's a Predaplant that loves to be sent to graveyard? Byslip, which also searches our combo piece for next turn. Or we can send a card like Hydra, which now has a bunch of Predator counters that are currently on the field. So if any of the monsters that were on the field when we activated Predaplanting are still on the field by end of turn, the moment we start our turn, our first action can be tributing the most problematic thing off for Hydra. But that's it for our Predaplant main deck cards. We're playing 21 of them. Now let's get on to our branded main deck cards, which we're playing 9 of. We're on Double Fallen of Albaz because we kind of want to resolve branded fusion more than once. 1 Aluber Jester of Despia. This is a target for this is our only target for branded opening, so we just want to be playing 1 of it. I was tempted to play 2, so we could always resolve the branded opening. However, it's not necessarily worth clogging the deck up because we already have enough good normal summons, being Orphis Scorpio, Sundew, and even Albaz is an alright normal summon. So we do have normal summons in the deck, so it's not necessarily like we have to normal summon a Luber or die. And then we are on 1 Stay Sailor Romarine, the honorary Albaz and Predaplant card. Its first effect isn't really relevant. Quick effect, you can target 1 face-up monster you control, send 1 other plant monster from your control to the graveyard, and if you do the next time the targeted monster to be destroyed by battle or card effect, it is not. But the main thing is, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can send 1 level 5 or lower plant monster from your deck or extra to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of Stay Sailor Romarine once per turn. In your combo, you'll see how it comes up, but I'm going to explain it verbally here if you're not going to be watching the combo. We have our branded fusion, so what we want to be doing is sending Albaz plus Romarine in order to be making Albion. Then we can start a chain, being Albion Chainlink 1, Romarine Chainlink 2, since it was sent to graveyard by a card effect, to add a Predaplant Byslip from, to send a Predaplant Byslip from deck to graveyard in order to search another Predaplant, and also chain blocks our Albion in case they have some chainable interaction that can negate it, but it has to be chained to the Albion, like for example something like an Apollosa. But we also then get to go Albion to go banish Albaz, banish Albion to make a Mirror Jade, which sometimes isn't the best play because this deck doesn't actually need to banish that Albion off the field most of the time. So Romarine is also the only light target in our entire main deck in order to make Albion. The second Albion here is to be sending to the graveyard with Mirror Jade's effect. But that's it for our main deck monsters. We're also on triple branded fusion, letting us use stuff from deck as fusion material, including Fallen of Albaz. Double branded opening, which allows us to pitch a card and summon a Despia from deck or add it to hand as well. And then we can banish it from our graveyard to protect fusion summon monsters we control from being destroyed by card effects. And then for our non-engine, non-engine doesn't mean it doesn't synergize with our engine, more that it doesn't belong to a specific archetype. We're on double triple tactics talents for hand traps. I probably should put these back here with the called by. We're on double polymerization. Since we're playing so many Predaplants, even if our cards get interacted with on normal summon, we can still poly in order to do plays. However, we don't have enough space to play edge imp cards like Patchwork and Chain, so we have to just play 2 poly and hope we find it, because we're not really going to be searching this realistically speaking. We're on triple super polymerization. Predaplant is pretty much the super polymerization deck after Yubel existed. So the thing is, since again, Sundew can make stuff dark, so we can basically use just their monsters with predator counters on it to make all of our cards functionally. Not stuff like Ambulo, because that needs Predaplant specifically, and we probably can't make the full Dragostapelia using their cards since it needs a fusion, and we can't guarantee they're playing a fusion deck. However, cards like our Trivertum, we can use half a Dragostapelia. We can even use stuff like Starving Venom, Predapower, Fusion Dragon if we are against a fusion deck. This completely hoses Branded, for example, since Mirror Jade is a dark, and they'll typically end on another fusion. We can literally just hard make Starving Venom, Predapower, Fusion Dragon using their cards, which is very funny. And then our typical super poly targets of Garura, Starving Venom, and Mud Dragon, which means I'll just gloss over those when talking about the extra deck. We're on 1 Foolish Burial since we have cards with graveyard effects, namely Romarine, Byslip, and we want to get Hydra engraved if possible. And then we are on 1 instant fusion because the best fusion card in this deck is a 5, so we can just cheat that out. And 1 Called by the Grave and the previously mentioned triple tactics talents. You notice we're not on hand traps. That's because this deck doesn't really actually have the room for them. In order to play hand traps, you'd probably need to either remove the branded portion entirely, which is functionally neutering the deck, or cutting the Predaplant portion to a degree where you're streamlining the process so insanely much where hand traps against you will start to be turn ending, where you'd have to basically make sure everything resolves in order to make plays. Well, with this version of the deck, we can let stuff get negated since we're going to have so many in archetype cards. Maybe a poly there, poly here, Practice, branded fusion. We're going to be opening hands that are going to be varied enough where we're going to be able to play through interaction. Whereas the hand trap version, sure, it won't be able to play through interaction as well. It'll be able to interact with its opponents harder in order to prevent their board from being produced. But that is it for the main deck, and I saw it 40, really cheap main deck being at $60. So this is a budget deck. If you notice, we're at $82 for main side, and extra in the side are cards that we're not even really quote unquote playing. These are more cards I'd recommend, but branded Banishment, I think everyone should be playing if we're playing the branded portion of the deck. But let's move on to the extra, being at $19 total, real cheap. We're on double Predaplant Ambula Melodies. This needs 2 Predaplant monsters. If it's fusion summon, you can add 1 Predaplant or 1 Predap spell trap from your deck or graveyard or face up extra deck to your hand. So it basically adds a Predaplant from anywhere to your hand. And then Ignition, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls with a Predator counter or 1 monster you control, tribute it, special summon 1 Predaplant monster from your deck. Do you think of a card that we might want to summon from our deck? Maybe Cobra? And if we've already gotten Cobra over the course of our turn, do you think maybe we can get another fusion, like with Chlamydia Sundew? So, Ambula Melodies is without a doubt the best fusion in the entire deck. It does everything for the archetype, and we're playing 2 of it because we want to be able to make it twice. It's pretty simple, because it's both our way of getting our board made as well as our way of recovering our board state and even removing stuff from our opponent's board by tributing it to summon our own Predaplants from deck. We're on double Predaplant Dragostapelia. It needs a fusion and a dark. Once per turn, quick effect, put a Predator counter on a face-up monster an opponent controls. It has the level modulation thing, and it has an effect on it. Negate the activated effects of your opponent's monsters that have Predator counters. If you haven't noticed, that's insane, because our end board typically will end on a Dragostapelia plus a Predaplanting. And what this does is it turns Predaplanting into not just a level modulation card, not just a Foolish Burial and then also a Surge, but also a skill drain of sorts, basically negating all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls as long as Dragostapelia is on the field. And since all their monsters are negated, it's going to be not the easiest task to get Dragostapelia off the field. And keep in mind, that's all without even activating the Dragostapelia's effect. You'll still have that 1 extra negate on the Dragostapelia if they make something like an SP Little Knight or Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy or something along those lines. We're on 1 Predaplant Trifurtum. I tried my hardest on that one. That's what I really tried. It needs 3 dark monsters on the field, so no in-hand shenanigans with this guy. Gains attack equal to the total original attack of all other monsters on the field with Predator counters. This is how you kill your opponent. You're never really going to have to count to do the math for game. As long as you've activated a Predaplanting turn 2 during your opponent's turn 1 during your turn 2, and then you can make a Trivertum on your turn 2, overall turn 3. This guy is going to be large enough to basically get over almost anything and kill your opponent, which is pretty kino. It also has an effect that is really, really good for interaction. When your opponent special summons a monster from their extra deck while you control this fusion summon card, quick effect, you can negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. Yeah, it's a solemn warning. Oh, did I also forget the effect? If your opponent controls a monster with a Predator counter, you can special summon this card from your grave in defense position. Sure, you won't get that negate to summon effect anymore since it's only a fusion when the fusion summon version of this card is on the field. However, you will still get that big fat fucking body. I remember I mentioned earlier Starving Bet on Predapower Fusion Dragon. Pure Predaplant can't really make it. This deck can. We can use cards like Lubellion the Searing Dragon in order to fulfill the requirement by shuffling back a Dark Fusion monster, like, I don't know, maybe a Mirror Jade that's been used up and banished or in the graveyard or something, and itself, in order to fulfill the requirements in Starving Venom Predapower Fusion Dragon, which reads, it's always treated as a Predaplant card. Once per turn, when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can tribute one monster on either field with a Predator counter, and if you do, negate the activation, which is an Omni Negate, nice. If this fusion summon card you control is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can target one dark monster in your graveyard and special summon it. You can use this effect of Starving Venom Predapower Fusion Dragon once per turn. If you haven't noticed, that first effect is not a hard once per turn, although the second effect is. So let's see if theoretically you negate something and your opponent removes the Predapower Fusion Dragon, and then the Fusion Dragon effect will activate, and it'll target any dark monster in your graveyard. Can we think of a dark monster in our graveyard that is interaction against our opponent? I'll give you a hint. We're looking at the card right now. Since it can bring itself back, it just gives you another negate. So yeah, I like this card a lot. It's not realistic. I'm going to be super upfront. This card is not a realistic card, and you're not going to be summoning this every game. This is maybe a once out of every 5 game card, but this card is the card that's going to win you that 1 out of 5 games that it actually comes up in. For Super Poly cards, we're on 1 Garura, 1 Starving Venom. Funny enough, this is technically part of Archetype, which is funny in itself. And 1 Mud Dragon of the Swamp, which can protect our cards as well. And then for our branded cards, we're on 1 Lubellion the Searing Dragon. In this deck, we always want to be shuffling our Lubellion back, so we always have access to both Lubellion as well as Fallen of Albaz, ideally. We're on double Albion. I mentioned we're only realistically going to be making one of this the right way, and then we're just going to be sending the other one to the graveyard with Mirror Jade. Speaking of, we're on double Mirror Jade, and the last card is Guardian Chimera. You might be thinking to yourself, why are you playing Guardian Chimera? You're only playing 2 Poly, and it's not searchable, and that's the only spell card in here that can realistically fusion summon the Guardian Chimera. That is a great observation, however, there's one thing you may be missing. Pendulum cards are spell cards, and their pendulum effects are spell effects. So if we fusion summon, I don't know, let's say Bufo plus Triantis plus any card in our hand, we make Guardian Chimera. And then it was fused with a spell effect, so we get to go Chainlink 1 Guardian Chimera, draw a card, pop 2 cards, since Triantis counts themselves as monsters on field when used as a fusion summon. And then we get to go Bufo to chain block the Guardian Chimera to add back the Triantis, and then Triantis to put Predator counters on everything functionally. So you can see how that can start to get really out of hand. So we're playing that 1 Guardian Chimera, both for this Poly situation, as well as being a really good card to surprise our opponent with, because a lot of people aren't really expecting this version of the deck to be playing Guardian Chimera. And then in our side deck, I actually really want to main deck this card. It's Branded Banishment. This is the trap version of Super Poly functionally. The main reason I want to play it is because it's searchable via Albion the Branded Dragon if we send it to graveyard with a Mirror Jade. Like let's say example at turn 2, on our opponent's turn, we use Mirror Jade, send an Albion, end of their turn, we can set a Branded Banishment. So now we have a Super Poly to activate during our draw phase or standby phase to try and remove threats from the board before we actually start our turn. And other cards I want viewers to consider is Embers of the Ashened. It's a Super Poly target. I mean, it's just 2 Pyros, so I'd recommend like siding it maybe if you're expecting to play against Snake Eye, which this card's really good against. As well as 1 Neos Fusion. This could also work for like any quote-unquote fusion card, like Shaddoll Fusion, Fusion Destiny. They're all cards that we can search instead of Branded Fusion. Neos Fusion is better at going second than Branded Fusion is, because you just make Rainbow Neos and wipe the board functionally. And Neos Fusion also protects your own Rainbow Neos from graveyard. Or we can go Fusion Destiny to make a DPE, you know, so on and so forth. Because Predaplant Verte Anaconda was part of an archetype. Predaplant, the deck that is used to grabbing these bullshit ass cards with Darlingtonia Cobra. But that's the deck profile. Tell me what you think. But before we end the video off, I'm going to pass you over to me about 1.5 minutes in the future where I have the whole thing set up, and I'm going to show you the basic 2-card combo. Alrighty, so here's our 2-card combo. It's Triantis plus Bufo. We're going to start off, we're just going to activate both of these. And then we're going to go Bufo effect. We're going to go Ambulo and this. And we're going to make Ambulo, and then we're going to go Chain Link 1 Ambulo. And then we're going to chain block this. We're going to go chain link 2 Bufo. And then we're going to go chain link 3 Triantis to put a counter on that Ambulo. We're going to add that Triantis back to hand. And then Ambulo is going to search any Predaplant from deck to hand. Here we're going to be adding our Predapractice. You might be wondering, why didn't we add the trap? I was talking all that game about adding the trap, add the trap, add the trap, but we didn't end up adding the trap. And this is why. Here we're going to go Predapractice. We're going to special summon Triantis, and you see because we summoned a Predaplant, we now get to add the trap. And we get an extra monster on field and an extra card out of deck, so we thinned our deck a little bit. Now we can go Ambulo. You might be thinking, oh, here we pop the Triantis. No, we pop the Ambulo. Because we want to be summoning out from our deck, we want to summon our Darlingtonia Cobra. Here we're going to go Darlingtonia Cobra effect. We're going to get ourselves our Branded Fusion. And then we're going to go and we're going to shotgun that Branded Fusion. We're going to go over here and we're going to make an Albion the Branded Dragon. Let's go Romarine plus Albaz. Let's special him out. And then we're going to go Chain Link 1 Romarine to dump, and then Chain Link 2 Albion, chain blocking the Romarine. We're going to make Mirror Jade. Here we're going to banish our Ambulo and our Albaz to special that out, and we're going to be sending from deck to graveyard a Buy Slip. And then we're going to use that Buy Slip, and we are going to add from deck to hand a Sundew. And now we have a critical junction. Here we have to make the decision. Do we want to end on a Dragostapelia, or a Trivertum, or even a Starving Venom Predapower Fusion Dragon? Because here, when we activate our Sundew, these are all of our options we can make. We can't make the Starving Venom Predapower right now. However, we are able to make any one of these. And that's only because Sundew requires you to use itself as material, and it cannot be used as material for Predapower Fusion Dragon. So here we are going to be making our Dragostapelia. This is the best basic card to be making. We're going to go Sundew plus Albion. It's always best to make these in defense position so they can't be lightning stormed. And we're going to set a card, and we are going to pass turn. I know it may seem a little threatening to have these two in attack position. If that really affects you so much, you can put them in defense. They're all both special summons, so we can be doing that. During our end phase, we have the ability to activate our Albion. Albion, if we don't already have access to a Lubra in rotation, we can grab Branded Opening, both to get a Lubra in rotation if you have cards in hand, to both to grab the Branded Fusion, as well as to get that Branded Opening in graveyard to protect our field. Or if we already have an opening in graveyard that we've activated previously, we can get the Branded Fusion to our hand. But here I'm going to be setting the Branded Opening. If we did choose to main deck the trap card we could summon, we could set and it would be live since we have an Albion in graveyard, so we'd functionally have a Super Poly on top of everything else we previously already have. So what do we actually have? So here we have a Mirror Jade effect. We're going to let this resolve through. They're going to go to main. I'm going to wait for the bot to summon like a monster. Okay. They summon a monster. So now let's start just pressing buttons and seeing what we can go. We can go Mirror Jade in order to send the second Albion in order to banish a card. And then we can go Predaplanting. We're able to activate this because it just needs to put counters on stuff on field, which allows us to send a Buy Slip to graveyard, puts a counter on everything. Then we get our Buy Slip effect. And the best starter card is either going to be Scorpio in order to summon something out of deck rather, if we have a monster in hand, or we know we can get a monster in hand. Or it's going to be Bufo because it's just another copy of Poly that sticks around on board. Or if our opponent has cards on boards that doesn't really do anything and we're not afraid of hand traps or interaction, we have our Sundew, which we can use to fuse their cards away into something. But here I'm going to be grabbing Bufo. And then do keep in mind, any monsters our opponent would have at this point are all going to be negated by our Dragostapelia. And then we still do have our Dragostapelia effect. But you see that we added this. Now we can go Branded Opening to pitch this to special summon this Aluber. and then our Luber would add us a branded fusion for next turn. And it's not like it's not live. We still have one Albaz in deck, and we have Lubellion. And you see we also get to get this Albion here on this turn too, to get this other branded opening, just to thin our deck and not draw it, since it is completely dead, since we have no Despias in deck anymore. So, as you see, this is how we get to a winning position with this deck. It is not unbeatable. There are ways to beat the board, but the amount of interactions and the type of interactions that it provides are very varied, as well as helps recoup a lot of the loss during your opponent's turn, where you're activating effects that are once per turn during both players' turn in order to get continuous advantage. But that's about it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching if you still are, and I'll be seeing you all next time. Bye bye!
Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you wanted to talk to more Yu-Gi-Oh players like yourself, I would highly recommend checking out our Discord server. Link is going to be in the description, as well as the QR code on screen. We do talk somewhat frequently about Yu-Gi-Oh and the current meta, so I would really enjoy to see you there. As well as we do recently now have channel memberships available on our YouTube channel, where we have 3 different tiers. We have Super Supporter at $2 a month, where you get loyalty badges, emojis, guaranteed comment responses, a shout out at the end of every video, as well as access to the members only Discord channel, where you get early sneak peeks at future videos. There is the Giga Supporter at $5 a month, where you have early access to all new videos about a day or two before they go up, as well as all the previous offers. And for $15 a month, we do have our final tier, which is going to be Femboy Fanatic. You get a guaranteed customized video every single month, as well as 1 hour of my time. Could be for anything you'd like. You want a duel? Absolutely. You want me to help build a deck? Absolutely. You want to play some Helldivers? Sure. I'll do anything for an hour once a month. But supporting does help me out quite a lot, and it does help me produce all of these videos. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be seeing y'all later. Bye-bye.